Okay, last video to recap the first workshop that we went on for Thursday. For this video, I'm going to be talking about this top interface here that we had discussed previously. Let's click here the top line. For the convert entities, offset entities, mirror entities, and linear sketch pattern, because I didn't get enough time to go over that. So I'm actually going to be following the example I gave you guys, not the example, but the activity I gave you guys when we were closing out the workshop of being the stamp. So I already know I'm an IPS because the setup is the same from the last videos. So I'm just going to go ahead first and create, this is optional, you didn't have to do it because all you were required to do was create a silhouette. But I actually want to imagine as if I have a contained box. So I'm just going to make this, let's see, maybe 7 inches by 7 inches. Realistically, I won't need this much space for my specific example. But actually, let's make it 10. Okay. So I'm gonna get straight into it because at this point, you guys have had the chance to do smart dimension. And from what I saw in the Jamboards, you guys were really good at doing that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and make this fully dimensioned really quickly. Okay, and because I want to show you guys linear sketch pattern, I'm gonna go ahead and create one of the requirements, which was having windows. I, for some reason, really want to make circular windows. So I'm gonna actually choose that. Oh wait, slipped my mind. This isn't completely fully dimensioned. Why is that? Oh, we gotta give it a relation against the origin. Okay, so let's give it that first. 1.5 equal. Oh, we can just change that dimension right here. So let's first dimension this circle before I create my linear sketch pattern because I want to make sure I know exactly where it's going to be. So let's make this 0.5. And then let's give it some symmetry. Let's make this also be 0.5. But I don't like how crowded that looks, so I'm going to move this up here slightly. Let's make this diameter be 0.3. Too small. 0.35. Oh, just remember, when you want to edit a smart dimension, all you have to do is double click on that while you are in smart dimension. So if I double click this, I don't believe it will let me. Oh, it does. Okay, never mind. Just double click this dimension and it should let you edit whatever unit you have put into it, or unit value you have put into it. Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of the smart dimension because it's too crowded right now and I want you guys to see what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna first start by showing you guys linear sketch pattern. My x-axis is just whatever path it's gonna follow horizontally. I don't want this specific x-axis. I'm sure it would show the same result given that, as you can see at the bottom here where the pencil is, my x-axis is parallel to this top line. But because I want to keep everything cohesive to my drawing, I'm just going to use this top line here. I'm going to first start by explaining to you guys direction 1, which is the horizontal direction. So I'm going to select entities first so that it can demonstrate the preview that SOLIDWORKS will always show you when you are using a feature. So I know going in the horizontal direction, I want 2 windows. This is too close together, so I am going to dimension it to be 0.3. I don't like that. Let's make it 0.9. I like that better. So you may notice that when it comes to a circle, SOLIDWORKS will always dimension something. Its smart dimension will always take into consideration the center point of the circle, right? Not the perimeter, the center point. So if you are measuring something based off of the perimeter of the circle, or a circular surface, just know that SOLIDWORKS is adding on to the distance from the center point to the perimeter of the circle. So just be aware of that when you're taking dimensions and you're designing something. Okay. If I want to increase how many things are going in a specific direction, I would increase this number. If I want to flip my x-axis, then I could do that. So if I click on this, it would just turn into the opposite way. Remember that in SolidWorks, you cannot apply negative values like on Onshape. SolidWorks only takes positive values. So if you want to go in an opposite direction, you can't just put like negative, right? It doesn't take the number line into consideration. It only takes positive values. So that's why you need to just fix the orientation itself. Okay, so now for Y value, say I want to go in this vertical direction. Let's say I want 5. It's going to go upward. I don't want it to go upward. I want it to go downward. So I'm going to change this into this. And let's see if it still applies the same thing. Yeah, okay. So I need to change this orientation here. Same thing, just click on the arrow and it flips it. So now let's dimension this to 0.3. That's still too close. Let's try 0.9. I like that better. It looks like a Lego, but I like it. Let's try 7. Yeah, because realistically we'll have a door down here, right? So you can see that with linear sketch pattern, it gives you 2 directions, right? It gives you the X direction and the Y direction, and all you have to do is just manually go in and change that. You will also notice that it has degrees here, but I'll get more into that in terms of the circular sketch pattern. It will also give you the option to dimension your Y spacing and your X spacing. And that will pop up when you select OK. And if you were to have your dimensions here open, it would demonstrate that, right? This is the 0.9 that we were talking about in this Y direction because we said we wanted to see that. So notice that these are all underdefined. So good CAD practices, everything has to be fully defined. That might over dimension my dimension actually. So let's do this one. Cool. Let's do this one. No. What relation could I need? Let's try this one. There you go. Okay. Okay. So that was the linear sketch pattern. Now let's say I wanted to use a circular sketch pattern. If I remember correctly, I wanted you guys to have a full moon. So let's just go ahead and add the full moon because I'm going to use that for my following example. Let's give a diameter of the full moon a nice even number. From this perimeter, I want it to be 1.4. I want this to be a little bit lower, so to give the effect that this is actually a really tall building. So I'm gonna put this at 1.3. Well, fully dimensioned, right? I'm gonna take away the dimensions again because it's overcrowding my sketch and I don't want to see that. Now let's say I wanted to add stars. In the case that I wanted to add stars, well, I first have to create it, right? Now I'm going to show you guys what this polygon feature is talking about. So polygon, if I sketch it, it just looks like that. It's just a polygon and it changes according to whatever number of sides I say I want it to have. In this case, I want it to have 5 because I'm planning to create a star. You'll notice that it has these X and Y, the radius of this inscribed circle in the center, and then a degree. And the reason it has a degree is because this thing can rotate, right? Your inscribed circle can also change in diameter. So when I set this, you will see a center line, not center line, construction line circle, and the orientation of your polygon can also change. So let's go ahead and make a star. Quick little fun tutorial. You can make a star by creating a polygon, and we know stars have 5 sides. So I want really itty bitty small stars. I'm gonna put that. Let's first fully dimension this. Inscribe circle. I want the diameter to be 0.1. I want this to be 0.8. And I want this to this. And by that, I was just clicking the center point to the perimeters of my outline sketch to be, I think this is a little too far from where I want it to be. Okay. This is still underdefined, which means I more than likely can still rotate this. So to fix that, I'm going to say that I want this line and this line to be parallel because that means it will only have to be moving along that line, right? So this is now fully defined. Now, let's say I want to use circular sketch pattern. This has 5 sides. I want a star. Star has 5 vertices. So I'm going to create a small triangle here, right? Going back to that knowledge of basic geometry, we want to stick to that. So I'm going to use this. Similar to our house, I'm going to make this equal. And I need to offer it a length for its side. So I'm going to make this 0.6. Oh, why do you do that? I see. Okay. That was a critical dimension. That's why I changed it. Okay, so I'm going to use circular sketch pattern to show you guys what that looks like. Here goes whatever center point I'm going to go about. I'm not going to use the full moon's center point, otherwise it would show my pattern around the moon. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the inscribed circle, because although it is a construction line, it still counts as a featured sketch, although it will not make it part of my final design. This is just to help me. So we selected that point. The arc we want isn't an arc actually, but rather these lines. So we select these. This point is acting funky. Let's re-click. Cool. We have 4. Now, the reason why it has 4 is because it has this number displayed right here in my design tree. I want to start, so I'm going to click 5. And now you'll see that it has these 5 points that go around 360 degrees. If I change this in my circular sketch pattern, because it gives me the option of how in the rotation that I want it to follow, it would only do so within 180 degrees of a radius. And I don't want that. Actually, in this case, that looks kind of pretty. So I'm gonna up the number to 7. Should I choose to? It kind of looks like the sun, if I'm being honest. But for simplicity's sake, let's just go back to 360. Let's keep it to the 5 stars. Okay. Cool. So now, oh, there's also instances to skip, but I don't use that. I'm not going to use it for this example because it might be a little too confusing. So I'm going to apply the circular sketch pattern. And now what I'm going to do is I want to create a skyline. But first, I'm going to get rid of these sketch relations. Cool. Okay, so let's say I want to use the circular sketch pattern again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this center point in terms of the parameters here. Use this center point. And the entities I want to replicate. Actually, it's going to be your selections. This one, this one, this line, this line, this line, this line. So basically just the perimeter of my star. Okay, so now I have these little stars, but now let's say I want them to orbit my moon, then I would do that. If I wanted to copy these along in a circular sketch pattern, like in my horizontal direction, for that it will be a combination of my circular pattern and my linear sketch pattern. So for now, I'm just gonna click OK here. And I'm going to, let's see, what I need for this to be fully defined. This moves, so let's do a little check here. It moves in accordance to, you see that blue dot that's in the moon? That needs to be fully defined. That would fully define everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this point here that came to be because of our circular sketch pattern to our moon's center point, and I'm going to make a coincidence over define sketch. I see. Okay. So let's take a different approach then. That's actually already defined there because of that bottom one. So let's use this top point instead. There you go. Okay. Oftentimes you'll find that when you're trying to fully dimension something, it won't work the first time. That's why you have to play around and kind of get an understanding and feel of what exactly it is that you want to define. Okay, so now let's say I want to use the linear sketch pattern now. I'm going to make my x-axis be this top line like I did before. And I'm going to select the patterns, this one, this one, this one, if they will allow me. You see how it's giving me that yellow preview? Say I want it to be 5, and I'm going to distance this by 0.7. This will give me a bit of a problem. So let's edit this one. Yeah, you can see there'll be some overlap here between these two stars, but you get the gist of it. If I wanted to do my linear sketch pattern to apply the stars again, it would be an easier and more effective way to use my time so that I can get a full night sky. I'm not going to do it in this case because if I do, it's actually going to look a little funky here because of the stars, but I'm sure you guys get the gist of it. The other thing I wanted to touch on was tangent relations, which doesn't apply to this specific sketch, and the arcs. The arcs and tangent relations can be a little tricky because arcs and radiuses are always something that will move around. And that's the reason why you have to go step by step to fully define them and make sure you have a fully defined sketch. Let's say I wanted to add some hills here. My first point of order is to know what type of arc I am working with. So let's say if I have these are my options, right? I have the center point arc, the tangent arc, and the 3-point arc. The one you just saw me demonstrate was the 3-point arc. I don't typically use it. The one I usually use is the tangent arc. The only problem with the tangent arc, however, is that I have to have 2 endpoints. So this point and this point could serve as my tangent arc. This point and my origin can also work as my tangent arc. But in this instance, that's not exactly what I'm going to be using. But if I wanted to, you could do that. The one very important thing that I did want to mention, however, is that if you're fully dimensioning something with the arcs and you're noticing that you're having trouble, you might want to first try to dimension in accordance to your center point of the arc. So let's say I want this to be this distance away from that point. And in terms of its vertical distance, let's say I want it to be, it didn't apply, that's okay. From here to here, I know that point's going to be set. So I know it won't move from that point, but now I just need to determine how far off I want this radius to move. So the last thing I would have to do in order to fully define this arc would be to give it its radius. So let's say I want it to be 3 inches. And now these endpoints are the ones that are underdefined. But for that, you would just have to like move them or give them a place to be. Let's say, for example, I want to make this a hill right into my skyline. So I would just have to make this coincidence. And I do the same thing with this other one here. But those are the 3 things that you want to look for when you're creating an arc. Number 1, what type of arc are you making? Is it a tangent arc, center point arc, or is it the first option, which was, the 3-point arc, the center point arc, or the tangent arc? Your center point needs to be defined. If you see that something isn't working, that should be your go-to attempt. And then your radius. The order in which you apply these dimensions matters at times. Sometimes you just have to play around with it. Over time, you develop the intuition of what you need according to what you are sketching. But again, that only becomes developed once you guys start practicing more, which you guys have been doing, which is awesome. But I'm pretty sure that was one of the last things. The next thing I wanted to show, and would be the last one for the time being, is your offset entities. Offset entities is something that you will use very often if you want a uniform displacement. So let's say, for example, I wanted my stamp here to have let's get rid of dimensions here, a border, right? I'm going to select offset entities. I'm going to hover over and I'm going to notice that it highlights this entire perimeter of my square. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Let's say I want this to be 0.20. You'll notice that it displaces the perimeter, like its copy of a perimeter uniformly by 0.2 inches. I could reverse this as well if I wanted to go inward. If I wanted to go outward, I just delete that. It could be bidirectional. It could also be base geometry, opposite geometry, whichever one you choose. Um, base and offset geometry are both construction lines. Just be aware of that. It's not going to be part of your final design if you are doing the parts. So let's say I apply that, then you'll see that it gives me exactly a uniform displacement and it looks like a little frame. But that was, I believe I could, yes, there you go. I had mentioned in the workshop that this would be a way that you can see and display your relations. Once you click on that, it will show you your relations in your design tree, which is handy to have if you want to see what order they are in and in what order you applied them. Let's allow these relations to appear. So if you wanted to see where each one of them was and in what order you apply them, you can check them here. Because remember that sometimes the process by which you go in dimension everything matters at times, especially when you're doing tangent arcs. That one just takes patience. Oh, before I forget, the last thing that I wanted to show was your sketch rounding corners. So for this one, you can either select the point of a corner, which is the vertex, or you can select both sides of the point that is being connected by those lines, and you change the radius here. That's really all there is to it, but I'll show you why I said in the workshop I don't recommend this method, because when I allow my dimensions to show, you'll notice that it already has a radius display and it could overcrowd your sketch purposely. And remember that in the workshop I said one of the ways that you should keep track of your sketch and the progress that you're making is by making sure that your space is cleared and that it's easy to read. The more complex your sketch becomes, with the more complicated designs you can create, it will be harder to upkeep, which is the reason why if you can avoid doing this last step that we did, you should do so. It was actually easier to apply this step when you are in parts, when you create the 3D part, but because the feature works in applying the step multiple times, like you would just have to click the corner. I'll demonstrate that in the next workshop, but for now you'll notice that in Sketch, you have to manually go in and select each corner and click OK, which can be a little time consuming if you have a lot of rounded corners to do, especially if you want to reduce the stresses of your designs in the stress that will go under it if it doesn't have that rounded corner. But that's something to consider if you are planning to do a rounding of your corners in terms of your sketch. I don't recommend it. Sometimes you should do it, sometimes you shouldn't. It's all up to your comfort level. Okay, I believe that was all we talked about in our first workshop. So I'll stop the recording here, send out the video to you guys, and if you guys have any questions, let me know.